Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Chapter 8: The Deathday Party. October arrived, spreading a humid relax over the grounds and into the fort. Madame Pomfrey, the nurse, became stored busy through a surprising spate of colds the various body of workers and students. Her pepper-up potion labored right away, although it left the drinker smoking at the ears for several hours. Afterward, Ginny Weasley, who had been looking faded, turned into bullied into taking a few by using Percy. The steam pouring from underneath her bright hair gave the impression that her whole head changed into on fire. Raindrops the size of bullets thundered on the castle home windows for days on end, the lake rose, the flower beds become muddy streams, and Hagrid's pumpkins swelled to the size of lawn sheds. Oliver Timbers' enthusiasm for regular training classes, but changed into not dampened, which was why Harry became to be discovered, late one stormy Saturday afternoon. A few days earlier than Halloween, returning to Gryffindor Tower, soaking wet to the pores and skin and splattered with mud. Even other than the rain and wind, it hadn't been a happy practice. Consultation. Fred and George, who were spying at the Slytherin team, had seen for themselves the speed of those new Nimbus 2001s. They pronounced that the Slytherin group become no more than 7 greenish blurs, taking pictures through the air like missiles. As Harry squelched alongside the deserted hall, he came across someone who appeared just as preoccupied as he changed into Nearly Headless Nick, the ghost of Gryffindor Tower, turned into staring morosely out of a window, muttering under his breath, "Don't satisfy their requirements, half of an inch, if that." "Hello, Nick," said Harry. "Hiya, what's up?" stated Nearly Headless Nick, beginning and searching spherical. He wore a speeding, plumed hat on his lengthy curly hair, and a tunic with a ruff, which concealed the fact that his neck became almost completely severed. He was faded as smoke, and Harry may want to see proper through him too. The dark sky and torrential rain outside. "You look afflicted, younger Potter," stated Nick, folding a obvious letter as he spoke and tucking it internal his doublet. "So do you," said Harry. "Ah," Nearly Headless Nick waved an elegant hand, account of no significance. "It's now not as even though I without a doubt wanted to enroll in notion I'd follow, however apparently I don't satisfy necessities." No matter his airy tone, there was a glance of wonderful bitterness on his face. "But you will assume, wouldn't you," he erupted abruptly, pulling the letter lower back out of his pocket, "that getting hit 45 times in the neck with a blunt axe might qualify you to sign up for the Headless Hunt?" "Oh, sure," said Harry, who turned into obviously imagined to agree. "I suggest, no person wishes more than I try this." It had all been brief and easy, and my head had come off well, I imply, it'd have saved me a first-rate deal of ache and ridicule. But, Nearly Headless Nick shook his letter open and examined furiously. "We can only receive huntsmen whose heads have parted corporation with their bodies. You will admire that it might be impossible in any other case for contributors to participate in hunt activities along with horseback head juggling and head polo. It's far with the finest. Regret, therefore, that I have to inform you which you do now not satisfy our necessities. With very first-rate needs, Sir Patrick Delaney Podmore." Fuming, almost Headless Nick filled the letter away. "Half an inch of skin and sinew retaining my neck on, Harry. Most humans could assume that's appropriate and beheaded, but oh, no, it's no longer enough for Sir Well-Decapitated Podmore." Almost Headless Nick took several deep breaths, after which said, in a miles calmer tone, "So, what's bothering you?" "Something I will do?" "No," stated Harry. "Not except in which we can get 7 loose Nimbus 1001s for our match towards Sly." The rest of Harry's sentence became drowned out via excessive pitched mewling from somewhere near his ankles. He seemed down and found himself watching into a couple of lamp-like yellow eyes. It became Mrs. Norris, the skeletal grey cat who became used by the caretaker, Argus Filch, as a kind of deputy in his limitless war in opposition to college students. "You'd better get out of here, Harry," stated Nick quick. "Filch isn't in a appropriate temper, he's got the flu and some 0.33 years by chance plastered. Frog brains everywhere in the ceiling in Dungeon 5. He's been cleaning all morning, and if he sees you dripping dust all around the region." "Proper," said Harry, backing far from the accusing stare of Mrs. Norris, however now not quickly enough. Interested in the spot by means of the mysterious power that seemed to connect him together with his foul cat, Argus Filch burst suddenly via a tapestry to Harry's right, wheezing and searching wildly approximately for the rule of Thumbreaker. There has been a thick tartan headscarf certain around his head, and his nose became strangely pink. "Dust," he shouted, his jowls a-quiver, his eyes popping alarmingly as he pointed on the muddy puddle that had dripped from Harry's Quidditch gowns. "Mess and muck everywhere. I've had sufficient of it, I let you know. Comply with me, Potter." So Harry waved a dark 6K44B5BB0 at 8 deck 5315A8A4CCFBC to Nearly Headless Nick and followed Filch lower back downstairs, doubling the range of muddy footprints on the ground. Harry had by no means been interior Filch's office earlier than it changed into a place maximum students avoided. The room changed into dingy and windowless, lit by using a single oil lamp dangling from the low ceiling. A faint scent of fried fish lingered about the area. Wooden submitting cabinets stood around the walls, from their labels, Harry ought to see that they contained information of every scholar Filch had ever punished. Fred and George Weasley had an entire drawer to themselves. An incredibly polished collection of chains and manacles held on the wall at the back of Filch's desk. It turned into not unusual know-how that he was usually begging Dumbledore to allow him droop students via their ankles. From the ceiling, Filch grabbed a quill from a pot on his table and started out shuffling round, looking for parchment. "Dung," he muttered furiously, "great scorching dragon bogies, frog brains, rat intestines. I've had sufficient of it. Make an example. Where's the form? Yes." He retrieved a big roll of parchment from his table drawer and stretched it out in front of him, dipping his lengthy black quill into the ink pot. Name: Harry Potter. Crime: "It became most effective a bit of dust," stated Harry. "It's best a bit of mud to you, boy, but to me it's an additional hour." "Scrubbing," shouted Filch, a drip shivering unpleasantly at the quid of his bulbous nostril. "Crime: befouling the citadel," counseled Sentence. Dabbing at his streaming nostril, Filch squinted unpleasantly at Harry, who waited with bated breath for his sentence to fall. However, as Filch lowered his quill, there has been a great bang at the ceiling of the workplace, which made the oil lamp rattle. "Peace!" Filch roared, flinging down his quill in a shipping of rage. "I'll have you ever this time, I'll have you ever." And without a backward look at Harry, Filch ran flat-footed from the office, Mrs. Norris streaking alongside him. Peace was the college poltergeist, a grinning, airborne threat, who lived to purpose havoc and distress. Harry didn't similar to Peeves, but couldn't assist feeling grateful for his timing. With a bit of luck, something Peeves had achieved, and it sounded as even though he'd wrecked something very big this time, could distract Filch from Harry. Thinking that he need to probably anticipate Filch to come back, Harry sank into a moth-eaten chair subsequent to the table. There has been most effective one issue on it apart from his half-finished shape, a massive, smooth, crimson envelope with silver lettering at the front. With a quick look at the door to test that Filch wasn't on his man or lower back, Harry picked up the envelope and read, "Quick spell. underscore 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 underscore. A correspondence route in Novice's Magic. Intrigued, Harry flicked the envelope open and pulled out the sheaf of parchment. Inner greater curly silver writing on the front web page said, "Experience out of step in the International of Modern-Day Magic? Discover yourself making excuses now not to carry out easy spells? Ever been taunted in your woeful wand work? There's a solution. Quickspell is an all-new, fail-safe, short-end result, smooth research course. Hundreds of witches and wizards have benefited from the Quickspell approach." Madam Z. Nettles of Topsham writes, "I had no reminiscence for incantations, and my potions had been a family funny story. Now, after a Quickspell direction, I'm the middle of attention at parties and friends beg for the recipe of my scintillation solution." Warlock DJ Prod of Didsbury says, "My spouse used to sneer at my feeble charms, but 1 month into your appropriate Quickspell route and I succeeded in turning her right into a yak. Thank you, Quickspell." Fascinated, Harry thumbed via the rest of the envelope's contents. Why in the world did Filch need a Quickspell route? Did this imply he wasn't a right wizard? Harry was just studying Lesson 1, Protecting Your Wand. Some beneficial hints, when shuffling footsteps outside, advised him Filch was coming again. Stuffing the parchment lower back into the envelope, Harry threw it back onto the desk simply as the door opened. Filch was looking victorious. "That vanishing cabinet changed into extremely treasured," he was saying gleefully to Mrs. Norris. "We'll have peas out this time, my sweet." His eyes fell on Harry, after which darted to the Quickspell envelope, which, Harry found out too overdue, turned into lying 2 toes far from wherein it had began. Filch's pasty face went brick crimson. Harry braced himself for a tidal wave of fury. Filch hobbled across to his table, snatched up the envelope, and threw it into a drawer. Did you read?" he sputtered. "No," Harry lied, quickly. Filch's knobbly fingers were twisting collectively. "If I notion you'd read my personal, no longer that it's mine, for a chum. Be that as it could, but..." Harry became observing him, alarmed. Filch had in no way seemed matter. His eyes had been popping, a tick turned into stepping into certainly one of his poachy cheeks, and the tartan headscarf didn't help. "Very well, cross, and don't breathe a phrase, now not that, however, if you didn't study, pass now, I must write up peace record, cross." Amazed at his success, Harry sped out of the workplace, up the corridor, and returned upstairs. To break out from Filch's office, without punishment, was possibly some sort of faculty report. Harry! Did it paintings? Almost Headless Nick got here, gliding out of a study room. Behind him, Harry ought to see the wreckage of a large black and gold cupboard that appeared to have been dropped from a wonderful peak. "I persuaded Peeves to crash it right over Filch's workplace," stated Nick eagerly. "Concept it might distract him." "Changed into that you," stated Harry gratefully. "Yeah, it labored, I didn't even get detention." "Thanks, Nick." They activate up the corridor together. Almost Headless Nick, Harry noticed, became nonetheless maintaining Sir Patrick's rejection letter. "I desire there was something I could do for you, approximately the Headless Hunt," Harry stated. Almost Headless Nick stopped in his tracks, and Harry walked right via him. He wished he hadn't, it became like stepping through an icy shower. "However, there may be something you may do for me," stated Nick excitedly. Harry, would I be asking too much? But no, you wouldn't want. "What's it?" stated Harry. "Properly, this Halloween may be my 500th death day," stated Almost. Headless Nick, drawing himself up and searching dignified. "Oh," said Harry, now not positive whether or not he need to look sorry or glad approximately. "This. Right. I'm retaining a party down in one of the roomier dungeons. Buddies will be coming from everywhere in the United States. It'd be such an honor in case you could attend. Mr. Weasley and Passover Granger might be most welcome, too, of Path, but I dare say you'd instead visit the school dinner party?" He watched Harry on tenterhooks. "No," stated Harry Speedy, "I'll come. My dear boy. Harry Potter, at my Deathday birthday celebration." And, he hesitated, looking excited. "Do you watched you can probably mention to Sir Patrick how very scary and fantastic you discover me?" Of Root," said Harry. Nearly Headless Nick beamed at him. "A Deathday Party," said Hermione keenly when Harry had changed at final and joined her and Ron in the not unusual room. "I guess there aren't many dwelling people who can say they've been to at least one of those. It'll be charming." "Why would everybody want to have a good time the day they died?" stated Ron, who was midway through his potions homework and grumpy. "Sounds useless depressing to me." Rain became still lashing the home windows, which had been now inky black, however. Inner all looked vivid and joyful. The firelight glowed over the countless squashy armchairs in which human beings sat analyzing, doing homework or, inside the case of Fred and George Weasley, attempting to find out what would happen in case you fed a filibuster firework to a salamander. Fred had rescued the exceptional orange, hearth-dwelling lizard from a care of magical creature's elegance and had become now smoldering gently on a table, surrounded by way of a knot of curious humans. Harry became at the point of telling Ron and Hermione approximately Filch and the quickspell course when the salamander whizzed into the air, emitting loud sparks and bangs, because it whirled wildly spherical the room. The sight of Percy bellowing himself hoarse at Fred and George, the amazing show of tangerine stars showering from the salamander's mouth, and its escape into the fire, with accompanying explosions, drove both Filch and the quickspell envelope from Harry's mind. By the point Halloween arrived, Harry became regretting his rash promise to visit the Death Day celebration. The rest of the school turned into fortunately looking forward to their Halloween ceremonial dinner. The top-notch corridor had been decorated with the same old live bats. Hagrid's massive pumpkins had been carved into lanterns large sufficient for 3 men to take a seat in, and there had been rumors that Dumbledore had booked a troupe of dancing skeletons for the entertainment. "A promise is a promise," Hermione reminded Harry bossily. "You stated you'd visit the Death Day birthday party." So at 7 o'clock, Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked immediately past the doorway to the packed high-quality corridor, which turned into glittering invitingly with gold plates and candles, and directed their steps instead closer to the dungeons. The passageway main to Nearly Headless Nick's birthday party had been lined with candles, too, even though the effect changed into some distance from cheerful. Those have been lengthy, thin, jet-black tapers, all burning vibrant blue, casting a dim, ghostly, mild even over their personal living faces. The temperature dropped with every step they took. As Harry shivered and drew his robes tightly around him, he heard what appeared like 1,000 fingernails scraping an enormous blackboard. "Is that supposed to be music?" Ron whispered. They turned a nook and saw almost Headless Nick standing at a doorway hung with black velvet drapes. "My pricey buddies," he stated mournfully. "Welcome, welcome, so pleased you could come." He swept off his plumed hat and bowed them interior. It became a tremendous sight. The dungeon turned into full of hundreds of pearly white, translucent humans, primarily drifting around a crowded dance ground, waltzing to the dreadful, quavering sound of 30 musical saws, performed via an orchestra on a raised, black-draped platform. A chandelier overhead blazed nighttime blue with 1,000 greater black candles. Their breath rose in a mist before them. It changed into like getting into a freezer. "Shall we the look around?" Harry cautioned, trying to heat up his foot. "Careful no longer to stroll through each person," said Ron nervously, and they set off around the brink of the dance ground. They exceeded a group of gloomy nuns, a ragged guy sporting chains, and the Fats Friar, a cheerful Hufflepuff ghost, who changed into talking to a knight with an arrow protruding of his forehead. Harry wasn't amazed to see that the Bloody Baron, a gaunt, staring Slytherin ghost blanketed in silver bloodstains, being given a huge berth through the alternative ghosts. "Oh, no," said Hermione, preventing. Turn back, I don't want to speak to Moaning Myrtle." "Who?" said Harry as they backtracked fast. "She haunts one of the toilets inside the ladies' bathroom on the primary floor," stated Hermione. "She haunts a lavatory?" "Yes. It's been out of order all 12 months because she maintains having tantrums and flooding the region. I by no means went in there. Besides, if I ought to avoid it, it's lousy seeking to have a pee with her wailing at you." "Look, meals," stated Ron. On the opposite aspect of the dungeon changed into an extended table, additionally covered in black velvet. They approached it eagerly, however next moment had stopped of their tracks, horrified. The scent was quite disgusting. Big, rotten fish had been laid on handsome silver platters, cakes, burned charcoal black, had been heaped on salvers, there was a extraordinary maggoty haggis, a slab of cheese included in furry inexperienced mildew, and, in pleasure of vicinity, and widespread grey cake. Inside the form of a tombstone, with tar-like icing forming the words, Sir Nicholas D. Mimsy Porpington. Died 31st October, 1492. Harry watched, surprised, as a portly ghost approached the desk, crouched low, and walked through it, his mouth held huge so that it handed via one of the stinking salmon. "Are you able to flavor it in case you stroll via it?" Harry asked him. "Nearly," said the ghost unluckily, and he drifted away. "I count on they've allow it rot to provide it a stronger taste," stated Hermione knowledgeably, pinching her nose and leaning toward examine the putrid haggis. "Are we able to flow?" "I feel unwell," said Ron. That they had slightly became round, however, while a touchman swooped all at once from below the table and got here to a halt in midair before them. "Howdy, Peeves," said Harry, cautiously. Not like the ghosts around them, Peeves the poltergeist was the very opposite of pale and obvious. He changed into wearing a vivid orange party hat, a revolving bow tie, and a large grin on his wide, wicked face. "Nibbles," he said sweetly, supplying them a bowl of peanuts blanketed in fungus. "No thank you," said Hermione. "Heard you speaking approximately bad Myrtle," said Peeves, his eyes dancing. "Rude, you become approximately bad Myrtle." He took a deep breath and bellowed, "Oh Myrtle." "Oh, no, Peeves, don't inform her what I said, she'll be without a doubt disenchanted." Hermione whispered frantically. "I didn't imply it, I don't thought's her, hey, Myrtle." The squat ghost of a girl had glided over. She had the glummest face Harry had ever seen, half hidden at the back of lank hair and thick, pearly spectacles. "What?" she said sulkily. "How are you, Myrtle?" said Hermione in a falsely bright voice. "It's exceptional to peer you out of the bathroom." Myrtle sniffed. "Passover Granger became simply talking about you," said Peeves slyly in Myrtle's ear. "Just saying, announcing, how quality you appearance this night," stated Hermione, obvious at Peeves. Myrtle eyed Hermione suspiciously. "You're making a laugh of me," she stated, silver tears welling swiftly in her small, Sevia eyes. "No, simply, didn't I just say how excellent Myrtle's searching?" said Hermione, nudging Harry and Ron painfully within the ribs. "Oh, yeah. She did. Don't deceive me," Myrtle gasped, tears now flooding down her face, at the same time as Peeves chuckled thankfully over her shoulder. Ju observed, I don't realize what human beings call me at the back of my returned. Fats Myrtle. Unsightly Myrtle. Miserable, moaning, moping Myrtle. You've forgotten Pimply, Peeves hissed in her ear. Moaning Myrtle burst into anguished sobs and fled from the dungeon. Peeves shot after her, pelting her with moldy peanuts, yelling, Pimply! Pimply! Oh, pricey, said Hermione sadly. Nearly Headless Nick now drifted in the direction of them through the gang. Enjoying yourselves? Oh, yes, they lied. Now not a bad turnout, stated Almost Headless Nick proudly. The wailing widow came all the manner up from Kent. It's nearly time for my speech, I'd hire Cross and warn the orchestra. The orchestra, but, stopped playing at that very second. They, and all people else in the dungeon, fell silent, looking around in pleasure, as a searching horn sounded. Oh, right here we go, stated Almost Headless Nick bitterly. Via the dungeon wall burst a dozen ghost horses, every ridden by using a headless horseman. The assembly clapped wildly. Harry started out to clap, too, however stopped quickly at the sight of Nick's face. The horses galloped into the middle of the dance floor and halted, rearing and plunging. On the front of the PC became a large ghost who held his bearded head below his arm, from which function he changed into blowing the horn. The ghost leapt down, lifted his head high inside the air so he should see over the crowd. Everyone laughed, and strode over to Nearly Headless Nick, squashing his head back onto his neck. Nick, he roared. How are you? Head nevertheless hanging in there? He gave a hearty guffaw and clapped Nearly Headless Nick on the shoulder. Welcome, Patrick, stated Nick stiffly. Stay UNS, said Sir Patrick, recognizing Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and giving a big, fake leap of astonishment, so that his head fell off once more. The crowd howled with laughter. Very amusing, said Nearly Headless Nick darkly. Don't thoughts Nick, shouted Sir Patrick's head from the ground. Still disenchanted we gained let him be part of the hunt. But I suggest to say, have a look at the fellow. I suppose, stated Harry hurriedly, at a meaningful look from Nick. Nick's very frightening and, Ha, yelled Sir Patrick's head. Wager he asked you to say that. If I could have all people's interest, it's time for my speech, said Nearly Headless Nick loudly, striding in the direction of the rostrum and hiking into an icy blue spotlight. My past due lamented lords, girls, and gentlemen, it is my awesome sorrow. But nobody heard tons extra. Sir Patrick and the relaxation of the headless hunt had just begun a recreation of head hockey, and the group turned into turning to watch. Nearly Headless Nick attempted vainly to recapture his target audience, but gave up as Sir Patrick's head went cruising past him to loud cheers. Harry turned into very bloodless by means of now, no longer to mention hungry. I can't stand a great deal greater of this, Ron muttered, his tooth chattering, as the orchestra floor again into motion and the ghost swept returned onto the dance floor. Let's go, Harry agreed. They sponsored in the direction of the door, nodding and beaming at absolutely everyone who looked at them, and a minute later had been hurrying back up the passageway, full of black candles. Pudding might not be finished, but, stated Ron hopefully, main the manner in the direction of the steps to the doorway corridor. After which Harry heard it. Rip, tear, kill. It changed into the identical voice, the same bloodless, murderous voice he had heard in Lockhart's office. He stumbled to a halt, clutching on the stone wall, listening with all his might, searching round, squinting up and down the dimly lit passageway. Harry, what are you? It's that voice once more, close up a minute. So hungry, for so long. Concentrate, said Harry urgently, and Ron and Hermione iced over, looking him. Kill, time to kill. The voice changed into developing fainter. Harry became positive it changed into transferring away. Shifting upward. A mixture of worry and excitement gripped him as he stared at the darkish ceiling. How could it be shifting upward? Turned into it a phantom, to whom stone ceilings didn't count. This manner, he shouted, and he started to run, up the stairs, into the entrance corridor. It became no true hoping to hear whatever right here, the babble of communicate from the Halloween ceremonial dinner was echoing out of the wonderful corridor. Harry sprinted up the marble staircase, to the primary ground, Ron and Hermione clattering in the back of him. Harry, what are we? Shoo! Harry strained his ears. Distantly, from the floor above and developing fainter nonetheless, he heard the voice. I smell blood. I odor blood. His belly lurched. It's going to kill a person, he shouted, and ignoring Ron's and Hermione's bewildered faces, he ran up the subsequent flight of steps 3 at a time, seeking to listen over his personal pounding footsteps. Harry hurtled around the whole of the second floor, Ron and Hermione panting at the back of him, no longer stopping until they became a nook into the closing, deserted passage. Harry, what turned into that every one about, said Ron, wiping sweat off his face. I couldn't listen something. But Hermione gave a sudden gasp, pointing down the corridor. Appearance. Something was shining on the wall in advance. They approached slowly, squinting through the darkness. Foot-high phrases had been daubed on the wall among home windows, shimmering in the mild cast through the flaming torches. The Chamber of Secrets and Techniques has been opened. Enemies of the air, pay attention. What's that thing, putting beneath, stated Ron, a moderate quiver in his voice. As they edged nearer, Harry nearly slipped. There has been a big puddle of water at the ground. Ron and Hermione grabbed him, and they inched in the direction of the message, eyes fixed on a darkish shadow under it. All three of them found out what had become right away, and leapt backward with a touch. Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, changed into placing via her tail from the torch bracket. She turned into stiff as a board, her eyes extensive and staring. For some seconds, they didn't pass. Then Ron stated, "Let's get out of right here." "Shouldn't we strive and assist?" Harry began awkwardly. "Accept as true with me," said Ron. "We don't want to be discovered here." However, it became too overdue. A rumble, as although of remote thunder, instructed them that the banquet had simply ended. From either cease of the corridor wherein they stood got hear the sound of hundreds of FT climbing the steps, and the loud, happy talk of nicely fed humans. Next moment, students have been crashing into the passage from both ends. The chatter, the bustle, the noise died abruptly because the people in the front spotted the pudding cat. Harry, Ron, and Hermione stood by myself, in the center of the corridor, as silence fell, some of the mass of college students pressing forward to look the grisly sight. Then someone shouted through the quiet. Enemies of the air, watch out. You'll be subsequent, mudbloods. It became Draco Malfoy. He had driven to the front of the group, his bloodless eyes alive, his generally bloodless face flushed, as he grinned on the sight of the placing, immobile cat.